Travel and Things presents In Conversation With. I am your host, David Batsoffen, and my guest today is Meena Singh, who not only works for the Organ Donor Foundation, but is a liver transplant recipient herself. Meena, good morning. Welcome to you. Thanks very much for joining me today.
Good morning, David. Thank you so much for having the Organ Donor Foundation.
It's a bit of a left of center for Travel and Things, but as a card-carrying, I should have done that. I'm a card-carrying member. He says not being able to find his card now, but I am. I was going to show you this, but it's a coffee royalty thing. That doesn't help you. Now I can't find it. Oh, darn it.
Well, if you want one, we'll send you a new one. Not a problem.
I think it's about time for a new one. But first, let's chat about being. Oh, here it is. You can see how well worn it is.
Oh, absolutely. We need to send you a new one. We have a new one. Yes.
Firstly, what is it? Talk to me about being an organ transplant recipient.
David, I think having the transplant has been the single most definitive moment of my life. Okay, it's made me value life itself, value love, my family, my friends, and my support network. It changes your whole outlook on life. It actually makes you look at things from a totally different perspective. So you don't, to use the phrase, you don't sweat the small stuff anymore. You know,
Right.
You have bigger things to concentrate on. Yes. So for me, it's been life-changing in more ways than one. It's given me a life that I didn't have. So for someone to say it's a second chance is not actually true, because it's a totally new life. The life I had before it's chalk and cheese. There's no comparison.
Right.
So definitely life-changing, and definitely a new sense of perspective and a new sense of value for a lot of things that I took for granted.
Now, you were a liver transplant recipient. In South Africa, do recipients get to meet the family of those that they get organs from, or is that still not allowed?
No, it's not allowed by law.
Okay. But now you say by law, but what happens if there's an agreement between families?
It's a bit difficult to do because you don't know where or from who organ comes from. Yeah, you have no idea unless you work it out. I mean, we've had the very odd occasion where people have said, okay, I got a transplant on that date, there was an accident and it was that person, but you're not allowed to contact the person.
Okay. Now, there is talk around cell memory when it comes specifically to heart transplants. People say they wake up, they've never had a beer in their life, but all of a sudden they want beer, all of those type of things. Is it the same with the liver or not necessarily so?
Yes, absolutely. Really? It's absolutely the same, because I woke up wanting to drink Oras. I have never, ever had Oras in my life. And it was weird because my husband was looking at me like, what is wrong with you? And I'm like, I need to drink Oras. And because of you have cortisone-induced diabetes, they couldn't give me the ordinary Oras, so they had to find the diabetic one.
Right.
It was ridiculous. I couldn't explain this. So yes, I think it's there. I think it's definitely there. Yes.
Right. Is there still hesitancy around people donating organs? Now, several years ago, a running friend of mine was killed in a horse riding accident. And she was an organ donor, and 7 people benefited from her death. It was almost as a result of her that I became an organ donor. But much like the vaccine nowadays, there still seems to be hesitancy, and I'm not necessarily talking from a cultural or from a religious perspective, but just people saying, no, these are all my organs, I've died with them, or I'm going to die with them. I want to keep them. Nobody else is getting them.
No. When we do awareness talks and awareness days, we get that very often. It's like, I want to be buried whole, or I want to be cremated whole, which is a bit of a contradiction, because you're going to be buried. Your organs are going to rot. You're basically going to be nothing. Or cremation is even worse. You're going to go to dust from where you came. So yes, we do get that, where people will tell you it's not my religion, it's not my culture, but it's just something that I don't want to do. And because of, there's a lot of myths and misconceptions, not even culturally related or religious. People will tell you, oh, well, if I'm an organ donor, they're not going to save my life if I'm in an accident or if I'm sick. That's one of the most common ones we hear. And I mean, the first thing I tell them is all medical professionals, doctors, take the Hippocratic Oath to preserve life.
Yeah.
And that's what they will do. They will attempt to do that until they cannot do it any longer, you know. Yeah. And then there's talks about, oh, well, I only wanted to donate. I want to donate X organ, but they will take everything, you know. And that's not true. I mean, if you only want to donate maybe your heart and you don't want to donate your eyes and your what, you tell your family and your family will inform. By law, they're not allowed to take what you're not prepared to give.
Okay.
So we get a lot as well. Yeah, there's a lot of misconceptions around. I mean, I could have a whole program with you about just that alone.
It's strange because in today where you recycle and repurpose, that's exactly what you're doing with those organs.
Yes.
And specifically, if you're one of those hippie tree-hugging types that says, let's save the planet, but these are my organs and I'm not giving them away type of thing. You don't need to.
You'd be surprised at how many environmentally conscious people and people that are so into all these kind of things that you mentioned that have that attitude. It's like, you know, yeah. Yes, no, it is. For me, I mean, having been through what I've been through, it just doesn't make sense. But I mean, doing what we do, we have to be very diplomatic. You know, we understand how you feel. However, take into consideration that you're going to be destroying organs that could save up to 8 people's lives and tissue that could help up to 50 people.
Well, the tissue is a whole separate talk. I know this. I'm talking with Julie about that at the moment. And we're going to have a whole different conversation around that. But organs specifically, so you can donate eyes, heart, liver, lungs, kidney?
Organs are without the eyes. Eyes are considered tissue.
Oh, okay.
So heart, lungs, liver, kidney, and pancreas.
Okay. And they will transplant whole. They won't take pieces, because I know in certain instances you can take pieces, I think, of the liver and pieces.
Oh, the liver, they can't use the different lobes.
Oh, okay.
So they will and use the 2 lobes separately, which they never used to do before, which is why it says save 7 lives. Okay. It's actually saved lives now, because they use the liver for 2 transplants, and normally the smaller lobe would probably go to a young adult or a child. Yeah. And they use the lobe for an adult because I mean, I think you know that the liver is the only organ that regenerates itself, so it will grow back to the size that it needs to be.
Okay, so then you see, again, I did not know that, and I'm married to a medical doctor, so I should have done more research before I spoke to you. But that aside, at the end of the day, I think a lot of people watch medical programs on TV, and I tell you, watching a medical program with the doctor sitting next to you is not fun, because she keeps screaming. No. That's not right. You don't have to, all you've got to do is a blood test. You don't have to cut the patient into 14 pieces to get those.
David, I can identify, I'm not even a medical professional, but I've learned so much medically that I look at something, I'm like, that is ridiculous. You're giving people the whole wrong idea. The only program, and I shouldn't say this, but the only program that came close to reality was called House. It's quite an old program. Yeah. You remember House? Yeah. He was actually, he's, what they did there, they even did a liver transplant. It was actually quite weird because I hadn't been listed, but I knew I was going to get listed when they did that.
Oh, okay.
It was quite real. And you know what was even weirder was that the condition was the condition I had. So the person in the TV program had the same condition that I had.
So it was virtually you experiencing what you were going to experience.
Yes, and the way they approached it and the way they treated it was almost exactly the way I'd been treated.
Okay.
So one of the very few programs,
Because I'd also think that people see if they're going to donate, or if they don't have an organ donor card, there are a bunch of people hanging around outside the operating room or waiting in waiting rooms at hospitals for people to die, so that they can leap in and grab family members. You know, like when you're in an accident and the tow truck pulls up and you're a bit thrown by the accident, and the tow truck driver
Yes.
just says sign here, and then the next thing you know,
Yes.
the car is gone, and you find it like 4 years later.
Yes.
And it's,
yeah,
I'm hoping it's not the same with transplant, because it's taken with a lot more empathy.
It's absolutely not the same. Our transplant coordinators that speak to the families are highly trained. They're actually amazing people, because I've dealt with them, because you get recipient coordinators and donor coordinators.
Right.
And they're trained to speak to the family in a way that is not intrusive, that is empathetic and all of that. And it's definitely not like you say, you have people hanging around, waiting to pounce. Our coordinators deserve a lot of credit. They're actually amazing people, because I've worked with them in hospitals, not on a transplant, but in speaking to medical personnel.
Right.
And the way they approach even to educate people is amazing. They're very highly trained.
Meena, why is there still such a reticence for people to be there on that organ donor transplant list? There are so many people and so few organs that, if you're not number one on a list, you can literally die waiting for an organ that will save your life. And in the meantime, people are dying, but they don't want to donate.
Yes, no, I said to someone the other day, it's actually quite scary to contemplate that more people die waiting for a transplant than are transplanted.
Yeah.
And in our country, it shouldn't be that way. But I think in our country, one of the biggest barriers is what we discussed before, the cultural and the religious reasons.
Right.
And that when we do wellness days and awareness talks, that is the most common reason that pops up.
But how do you get past that without seeming to be, disrespectful?
Yeah. What happens very often, David, is you get a young person that's very modern thinking, very forward thinking, but they're still bound by the tradition of their elders.
Right.
And appeal to that side of them, that younger, more modern thinking. And we say, look, we can understand the older generation being reticent. We can understand the need to, we respect the cultural aspect completely. I come from a Hindu background, but you need to think about preserving life. I mean, what would you do to preserve a family member's life? Would you donate to preserve a family member's life? Or by the other token, would you accept a donation to preserve your life, to improve your life? And most of the time they say yes. So what I say is, by the same token, if you're willing to accept for a family member, should it not also be the same on the other hand, to donate? And when you say that, they look at you, but they never thought of it like that.
Yeah.
So
talk to me about the Organ Donor Foundation. What does it do? How do people get involved? And is there an upper and lower limit? I've had my card for, I'm not sure how long now, but I will be 68 this year. Is there a cutoff for me for organs that you will or won't take from me?
Okay, David, the Organ Donor Foundation was formed in 1988 to actually address the critical shortage of organs in South Africa. So that's one of their key functions. So they create awareness. They do a lot of education around organ and tissue donation. They also interact with other organizations like the Cornea and the eye banks, the tissue banks as well, the Center for Tissue Engineering. So they have a lot of partnerships with organizations like that. And they also have other services they provide. They provide what they call a Flight for Life in-flight network. So to provide a flight for an organ, funds permitting, it actually can be up to 100,000 to get a chartered flight to move an organ. Yeah, so you get individuals that obviously most individuals cannot afford that. So they step in and assist where they can. They also, they have people like me, they have quite a big volunteer network. And what we do as volunteers, we do awareness talks at schools, tertiary institutions, basically churches, basically any gathering that wants us to address them. We go there. We do wellness days at companies, which is actually a great initiative to interact with people and discuss organ donation. We go to business and trade expos. We have awareness stands, and from experience, I found that is actually excellent because you get like quite a huge inflow of people at these expos. And I mean, like last year, for example, if COVID hadn't intervened, we would have had the first ODF stand at the RAND show.
Right.
And that would have been an amazing opportunity for the ODF. So, I mean, like I said, main focus is to address the shortage of organ donors, to create awareness of organ and tissue donors, to educate not just the general public, they also educate medical professionals in order for them to become aware of the need to refer donors or possible donors upon brainstem death. That's when you look at organ donation, but you have quite a short window. So we educate the trauma unit, the ICU unit nurses and the heads to say, look, you need to consider organ donation, you know, call us if you have the situation where a person is going into brainstem death, and we will speak to the family. So they also do that as well, you know, which is quite a big component, because even amongst medical professionals, you still get the myths and the misconceptions because they don't have enough information. So that's one of their functions as well. And then looking at what you just said about the upper and lower limit, we don't actually have that. One of our oldest donors, if I recall, was a gentleman that was 82 years old.
Okay.
His organs were in perfect condition. So what they will do is they will assess at the time of death whether they can use the organ. So you could perfectly healthy. You don't have chronic conditions that doesn't affect the organs. You know, that would be perfect. Even if you have a chronic condition, because I'll get a lot of diabetics saying to me, well, I can't donate because I'm a diabetic, but your other organs can be used, your tissue can be used. So that's automatically, age is not automatically an exclusion.
Okay. Meena, the other thing is, aside from carrying an organ donor card and informing your family, can you leave organs to ODF in a will?
It's a bit difficult, David, because remember, we have a very short time frame.
By the time the will's not going to be ready immediately or looked at.
By the time the will is ready, you might at a push be able to donate tissue. But organs definitely be out of the question.
Okay.
So I think the easiest thing, even if you don't register as a donor, inform your family that, you know, I'm happy to donate. Because at the time of death, our law stipulates that your next of kin will make the final decision. Whether you register. That's why we tell people, please speak to your family, let them know your intentions. You know, so that's very important.
If I scream out loud, it's because my cat is busy trying to climb up my leg and I'm wearing shorts. So I'm trying to hold him down and keep a professional outlook while I'm talking to you. But I thought I'd let you in just in case I can't control. Oh no, he's decided to go out. It's fine. Meena, for people who want to get involved, who want to be card-carrying members of the ODF, how do they go about it? If they want to be a volunteer, do they have to have been an organ donor recipient to be a volunteer?
Okay, let's speak about that. No, you don't have to be a recipient. You don't need to be a donor. We very often get people that you say are interested in organ donation, want to contribute to the cause, that become volunteers. We get families of donors, families of recipients that become volunteers. So yes, it's basically, there's not actually a restriction on who or who cannot be a volunteer.
Okay.
So that's very, very clear. Very, very simple to become a donor. You can either do it online at www.odf.org.za, or you can call the ODF toll-free line 0800 22 6611.
Would you do that number once? Would you do that number once more?
0800 22 6611.
Easy to remember, and there's no reason. I mean, you're looking, those people who are watching this video, you're looking at somebody whose life was saved because there was a family who was aware of the deceased's needs and were committed to doing that. So
and I always tell people, this is the miracle of an organ donation.
I
mean, if you want to use imagination, you picture me when I was ill, when I had the condition. I weighed 48 kilos. I was as yellow as an egg yolk. I'm telling you, David, we made jokes about my eyes. We used to call my eyes headlamps. That's my skin and eyes were that yellow. I mean, it was kind of, kind of macabre humor.
Yeah.
But I mean, you laugh, otherwise you're going to cry. And I'm not saying I look like a picture, but this is what I look like today because of an organ donor.
Wonderful, wonderful, wonderful. Meena Singh from the Organ Donor Foundation and a liver transplant recipient. Thank you so very much for joining me in conversation with. I hope viewers take cognizant of just how important being an organ donor is.
David, thank you so much for having the Organ Donor Foundation and for this lovely conversation.
Great stuff. There was Meena Singh, who was my in conversation with guest today.